Well, hey there. Bill Shirk, the man about the woods. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. And we are in the midst of spring. Our snow is melting. Things are slowly starting to green up. Temperatures are getting better. And for me, that means one of my favorite times of year. It's time to turkey hunt. And for me, turkey hunting isn't a solo adventure. I like hunting with other folks, and that's exactly why I have a guest along today. I don't hear anything. I don't hear any turkey calls. Huh. Oh, there's something in the woods. Bill Worth, is that you?
Hey, Mr. Shirk.
That's pretty good. Why don't you ever call that well when we're off in the woods trying to find one of these birds?
Oh, yeah. It's always an exciting time of year. But, to answer your question about why don't I call that well, it's all about me, right? I have to make sure that when the calling comes that I look good, and sometimes I don't look that good. Practice.
You look good and you call great. Bill Worth is a good friend of mine. We actually met because Bill is a builder by trade and built the Shirk house, but you and I kind of hit it off and became pretty good buddies and realized that we love to both fish and we both love turkeys too. And it's funny because the way you build houses, you are very detail oriented and no pun intended, all your ducks are in a row. And I thought about that and said, gosh, if this is how this guy conducts his business, I can only imagine how he hunts. And I would argue that's why you have become such a successful turkey hunter, because you don't leave any stone unturned. When you get ready to turkey hunt, you're very serious about it. Where does that all come from?
Thanks for that, Bill. I've always been very detailed, I guess. When you get into something, you want to be in it, wholeheartedly. And I don't know. Turkey hunting has really grabbed me, and it's something that I strive to get better at. Each time I go out, I learn something, and I can't wait to share some of that knowledge with the grandkids and any other friends that I go with. So it's been a really interesting time of year. I should say it is an interesting time of year as the birds start getting more active, and I get fired up myself.
So let's talk through your season. All right. So as you get ready to hunt, I mean, how do you prepare? Are you looking at maps? Are you just packing gear? How does your season get started?
Well, usually I gotta go through my gear because I've packed it away for 9 months, and you got to make sure that you have your decoys and have all your calls, and just make sure you got it all organized in your vest. That's kind of your starter, and then trying to figure out where I want to go first. And a lot of times I like to go south. It's usually a little bit warmer. As you know, I've kind of taken on the role of archery. That's just become a passion too. That although gun hunting is a lot of fun, I like the archery, and probably part of why it started is because the season was longer. You're able to hunt for pretty much all the season. Yeah. So then I could start to the south, go down around Zumbrota, that area, and kind of work my way up towards Malacca to the north. And so I kind of map out the areas, go on the aerial photos, Google Earth, Onyx maps, and start looking at the topography and just see what kind of trees, the vegetation that we're going to be hunting in, and then start calling folks. If you don't have the property already tied up, you just start calling folks to see if you can come and hunt their land. And usually it's pretty easy to get permission. So that's kind of how it goes. And then you sit down with your buddies and start talking about a game plan and where you're going to stay and, when you're going to be there, and, pack your food because a lot of times you're camping. So, yeah, so a lot of preparation goes into it.
Is that part of the fun?
That is so much part of the fun. Getting the bird is always a bonus, but the strategy and all the things that you got to do before you get the bird is really where it's at.
Mm-hmm. For me too, I think some of it is about the fact that it's spring, right? We've been on lockdown with our weather. Yes, you can get around the woods, but when you've got 2 feet of snow, it's a little bit trickier, especially at 10 below zero. Now things are temperate. Things are starting to green up. I love the smell of the spring woods. You know, it's just in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do. The snow's melting, and I actually live here in by Rogers, Minnesota, and in my backyard because I'm surrounded by trees, and it's trees that the turkeys like to roost in, and then it's, covered with leaves. As the snow melts, the turkeys start showing up, and they start kicking and scratching in our backyard, and it gets me excited just to think they're back and they're active. And next thing you know, they're on the back of our yard and they're strutting around, and then it gives me the opportunity to grab my calls, and I kind of play with them. I go from the front yard and start making calls and see how good it sounds. And, you get to compare when you have the live birds to just kind of play with them.
Yeah.
I don't usually hunt them here, but it does give me the opportunity to fine tune my calling. And then, so it's all the above where the smell of the woods, and then just getting out there. It's an exciting time of year, and winter gets long. So it's a great way to get out there and do some hunting and enjoy nature.
And I like trial and error, right? I didn't go to a bunch of formal classes to learn how to turkey hunt. When I started, I just started going, right? You've got your gun safety. Back then, the lottery to draw for a license and the time to pick was kind of tight, but if you'd be lucky enough and you'd get picked, I'd just go. I'd pack up the truck and I'd go. And early on, I wasn't a very good turkey hunter, but you learn a lot from your mistakes, right? I can remember I was hunting down in eastern Minnesota on a little piece of public, camping in a parking spot that Trout Unlimited had opened along a trout stream. And I had run into 2 other campers who were in the same little parking lot. It was a couple of guys out of Duluth that every year would go down there and camp. They were great mentors, right? They gave me advice. But I can remember tracking a couple of birds, and I finally got them at like 30 yards, but they were off the public property. They had snuck under a barbed wire fence, and they were on a farmer's pasture area, and so I couldn't shoot, right? And that was one of my first big missed opportunities, but you can't do that. So it was funny. We were sitting around the campfire later on, and these guys from Duluth were just laughing at me, chiding, saying, that farmer absolutely hates turkeys. If he knows that you didn't shoot a bird that had snuck onto his property, he will never talk to you again. But of course, I went and talked to that farmer, and he said, free run wherever you need to go. And of course, those birds never came back to that spot, right? But you learn from that stuff, right? Learned about relationships and getting permission and all kinds of stuff. But for me, that's part of the fun of turkey hunting, right?
Oh, I totally agree. And what you said about, being if it's on the neighbor's property, not just shooting and begging for forgiveness, that's a big deal, especially as you teach young children and your kids or whatever and grandkids. That's important that they know that too. The story's still a good story at the end of the day. Yeah, you let them go, but you know what? There's another day. But it's still exciting to get them within 30 yards. That's a really big deal to get them that close. That's your goal.
I think back. Close, I think back. You and I had a hunt, right, where we called in a pretty big bird, and literally we were watching the clock as the shooting hours. were sneaking up on us, and we ended up letting that bird go too. And that's the way it goes. There's always another day, and there's always another opportunity. Which takes us to your hunting season. I mean, for you, is it, you love the prep, obviously, you do your research, but once you're in the woods, for you, is it the bow? Is it the communication with the bird? Is it watching the woods wake up? Is it reacting to birds that are moving? Why do you do it? What's the turn on for you?
Well, I've been an active hunter since I was 12 years old, which was a couple of days ago. Anyway, when I say that, it was more about deer hunting. And, with deer, you get to see them and, maybe use a gun and you can shoot them when they get somewhat close. And then it evolved into archery. But the interaction with the deer is so much different than a turkey, where the turkey, you actually are trying to talk them in, coming your way, and they respond. And I found that my heart would race like I was going to shoot a big buck or something. And here's this big tom that I just worked so hard to bring them in. So I love that, you can communicate with them. And when you bring them in, it's so rewarding, even if you don't get the shot, just to bring them in that close and have them fight with your decoys. You've spent hours getting ready for that moment, and you set your decoys out. You've got up at 3:00. It's definitely an early sport. And you get out there, and all of a sudden you hear a chirp. And then you hear, maybe if a crow goes off, then that seems to activate those toms. And then to hear them gobbling in the trees, and you're looking around, and it's hard to even see them in the trees, which is amazing because they're a big bird. And then all of a sudden you hear them fly down. And now it's game on. You start trying to drag them your way. So there's so much to it, and the anticipation is overwhelming. And then to bring them right in, and with archery, you really want to bring them in there to that 20 yards or less, try to get that clean kill. Mm-hmm. And so now they're up close and personal, and they're gonna go up to your decoys and more than likely start fighting with your decoys, and that's pretty darn cool to sit back and watch that. So yeah, that's, I don't know. I guess I've told so many people and kids and friends how exciting it is, but once you get them out there and they get it, but just to be out there when the woods wakes up, that's fun in itself. So it's kind of different phases of fun in my book.
Yeah. The woods are completely dark and they are completely silent, right?
That they are. And if you're running a few minutes late, which happens, and a few minutes late, but still like 5 a.m. So now you're trying to sneak around on the edges of the woods, and you'll hear a gobble, and you're going, oh no, I'm late, But if if you're careful and move slowly along the edges and stay out of the, stay in the shadows, you can usually work your way to where you want to be and still have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, and, even your midday hunts I found are pretty successful. So you just walk a little while, make a few chirps, and keep moving, and get one to light up, and then of course you're scrambling trying to find a spot to hide and get a little cover. So yeah, it's addicting. But I tell people it's addicting.
So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today is you have this knack for moving around. It's not that you're antsy, but I think it's all part of your MO and how you hunt. Right? We've been on hunts together where you have a game plan. You know where you're going to go and why you're going to go. Talk about that.
Well, I think, part of the homework before the season opens is to go start walking the land. And maybe you spend a morning out there before the season starts and you try to figure out what the patterns are of the bird. And it's always best to try to catch them in their patterns if you can. In other words, they want to go north or whatever direction they'd like to travel to interrupt that pattern. So as I think about my day, is what are the birds going to do throughout the day? So you might set up in the morning and that works out, or it doesn't work out. Maybe they took a different path. Maybe they roosted in a different group of trees that night. You just didn't know that. So you got to be ready to move, but then you want to know your travel pattern. So you got to stay. You don't want to walk across the center of a field. You need to stay in the woods or on the edges and keep a low profile. So, but you're going to, I like to keep moving. So keep your strategy open to, hey, I'm going to adjust as I need to. But I don't know. It seems like you get up in the morning and you think, well, I'm going to go hunt a few hours. Next thing you know, you're putting them to bed. It's a pretty long day, but it sure is fun. Short nights of sleep.
Ugh.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, what is it that grabs you the most, Bill? I mean, what would you put your finger on it and said, hey, this is what really gets me about this?
Oh gosh, there's so many things, right? I like the gear. I like being self-sufficient, meaning everything I need is on my back, right? I like the game of cat and mouse. I like the camouflage, right? Goes back to being a kid and playing army in the neighborhood with all your buddies. I like to hide, right? And be set up somewhere where I can't be seen. It's tricking them a little bit. But you talk about the woods waking up. For me, that is one of my favorite things because there is complete silence. And if you turkey hunt in this part of the world, I think you notice the first sound is often the very same bird. It doesn't matter what year you're out hunting. There's a bird. I think I'll probably get this wrong, but I feel like it's a chickadee. And it is the first bird to wake up. And I think if you turkey hunt, you know what that bird sounds like. And that is always my cue. As soon as I hear that bird start to wake up, I think to myself, all right, 5 or 10 minutes from now, I'll bet you I'm going to hear the turkeys wake up in the roost, up in the tree, starting to gobble a little bit. And that sound or that moment always gives me goosebumps. Right? And I think that
I'm just listening and I totally agree with you because it makes me want to get out in the woods now, even though the season hasn't started. But,
I've had so many hunts where you hear those gobblers and you say, how far away are they? Are they 100 yards or 400 or half a mile? I can't tell, right? But you hear that gobble and you think to yourself, here we go. This is the moment. And then you hear them come down out of the tree or out of the roost, plop down on the ground, and they start gobbling, making some noise. And there are moments where you can tell they're coming your direction. And every sense I have at that point is so tactile, so alert, right? I mean,
without it.
That's what I love. I've had hunts where you can tell the bird is going away. It's going the opposite direction. You go, I give up. And you know what they've done? They've gone away and they've kind of circled around and they come in from behind you. And you think there's nothing going on for 45 minutes and you are silent. And all of a sudden that sound behind you. That's why I hunt, right?
Yeah, and I laugh because it's so true. You know, you think, oh man, they're going the other way. But I think that what you take away from that story is you need to stay put. Just tell yourself, I'm going to stay another half hour before you make that move. So even though I like to keep moving, I do force myself to stay an extra half hour, and just in case they let a gobble in the distance, so I know for sure they went the other way. Otherwise, you're right. About the time you stand up, there they go. And that is very frustrating. You had them coming and you didn't know it.
And that's people always ask for advice on turkey hunting. And that is always my advice is trust yourself, trust your spot, be patient. right? If you've done your research, if you've paid attention to the property, if you have a good idea of the pattern of the birds, you have to trust your process. And that means being patient and sitting. And it's really hard to do. When you put yourself in the woods, whatever, say you're in at 4:45 and that bird's not going to show itself till 9:30 in the morning. That's a long time to sit and be patient and not overcall.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is, like you said, not overcall. I've had hunts where you heard a gobble, let's just say the woods is only a quarter mile deep, but you heard it, so they're somewhere in the woods. And then what the best thing I think to do is just make a call maybe every 15 minutes, because they might very well come in silent. But overcalling, they know where you are. When you call, they've got you pinpointed. So when they want to come, it's like pulling them on a string. Other times they come in, they're a little cautious. So not overcalling is really key. When they're fired
and I used to be that guy.
Yeah, overcall, you mean?
I used to be that guy. When I'd get a gobbler to go, I'd just keep hammering away on my slate, thinking I was working that bird up into a frenzy, right? But they'd lock up a lot of time, right? They'd lock up at 100 yards out. I have had so many hunts where I could watch that bird and I'd call for a half an hour, talking back and forth. But you learn from that. They were worked up, but they were hesitant because something wasn't right. Right? We all want what we cannot have. And that's my rule in calling. Give them a little bit and then leave them wanting more, right?
Right. Well, you have to remember they can see so well. They're looking, and when they hear you, but they can't see it because you're camoed up and you're not moving, they're going to just sit there and look for movement at least. So that's how they just hang up, and they're not going to come.
So talking about movement, this has always been a quandary of mine ever since I started turkey hunting. I am not a great mouth caller. I can close the deal, but I cannot have a mouth call in all day long and use it effectively. I love slate calls. Always have, always will. But my big torment has been, what do I do when I'm on my call and a bird is moving towards me? I need my hands, right? You being a bow guy, and I don't hunt, in full blinds where I can just call until they're right in front of me, put the call down, pick up, shoot. What do you do? How do you manage that? How do you manage that movement?
Well, what I found myself doing is the setup, so I try to set up like on a crest of a hill. So they're coming, but yet there's a moment where they lose sight of you because they're maybe coming up the backside of the hill. That's the time that you put your stuff down and wait for them to come into your decoy. And so I actually kind of measure all that out using the crest of the hills to my advantage. So that's part of what I do. I mean, every scenario is different. If you're hunting flat ground, you just have to. It is challenging because I like you said, I'm not the best at mouth calling. I can do it a little bit, but I wouldn't say I'm great at it. So I do tend to use my slate call quite a bit, and just to draw them in. I think that's what I do the best with. And so, I don't know. There's so many different things, and like you said, it's trial and error. And I would rather not hunt inside of a blind, but with a bow, you have to draw. I'm not using a crossbow. I'm using a compound bow. So that's a lot of movement there going on. So you tend to have either you have some good backdrop and maybe you make a man-made, use some brush and stuff in front of you. But I just found that if there's hills, I can use the hills to my advantage. So by the time they get in close, I already have my stuff down and I'm at full draw waiting. So that's my tactic.
I'm laughing because I think back to a hunt. My 11-year-old Brady has been on a few turkey hunts with me. The 9-year-old Bennett has really only been on one hardcore hunt, but it was funny. We went out after school, and actually we were set up not too far from where you live, and had a bird that was instantly hot and kind of worked around. We were set up on the edge of this little cornfield, and he was coming, but we couldn't see him. And my youngest Bennett was so confused by that, right? He knew there was a bird, but he couldn't see it. And I kept saying, Bennett, it's okay. Be patient. He's coming towards us. He's going to come up over that hill. And literally the second that head popped up over the hill, Bennett, who was probably 5 at the time, shoot it, Dad, shoot it, shoot it. So all of a sudden our turkey hunt became, Bennett, shh, Dad, shoot it. Bennett, shh, Dad, shoot it. Bennett, shut up. And we ended up harvesting that bird. And I don't know how it was humanly possible that hunt continued after that little exchange between us. Meanwhile, my oldest, Brady, was sitting in between us, sleeping the entire time. So finally, I had a gun that day. Boom. Bird goes down. Brady wakes up like, oh, this is fun. Here's this turkey. But maybe that's why we hunt too, right? What a memory. And I've got that one logged now and shared that with the boys. Maybe that's why I hunt.
Well, and it's a great photo. I remember you sending me a picture of that one after you guys harvested the bird, and the boys were so excited. And I can't remember what their ages were, but I remember Bennett was fairly young. I mean, wasn't he only about 5 or something?
Yeah, he was just a little guy.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a little guy, but man, and then watching those guys lift that bird up, and it was just like covering up their bodies. The bird was so big compared to them. It was just a really cool picture when they got it. And I was so excited for you guys. And the memory, you're right. It's all about the memories. So I was very excited for you.
I'm going to have to figure out a way to get that picture up online, because the young one, Bennett, his camo that day was actually one of my t-shirts. So he's wearing this camouflage dress, essentially. Now they're bigger and badder. Brady is actually old enough now where he's going to gun safety this summer, and he's talking more and more about wanting to hunt birds, right? So there are chapters for all of us to this stuff, and maybe that's where it's headed next. Maybe it's sitting back and calling for Brady from now on, or for the boys. And I know you've done that with your grandkids, right?
I have, and my niece, it was a funny story, because we sat out in the morning and set up a blind in between the corn stalks, and we were calling, and the toms came out and kind of circled around us. We just couldn't, they had their hens, so they were happy. But lo and behold, here comes this Jake, and he comes for a quarter mile to see what all the action's about, and comes right by our tent. And then those toms started chasing him to get him out of there. And so I'm looking out the blind, and I kind of silently say, well, it's a Jake. If you wanna, and bang! I just jumped because she already had the gun up. She was ready, and we celebrated. And I remember sending the picture to you, and then of course when you fan them out, the feathers in the middle are a little shorter and whatever, and you go, nice Jake. And but I remember the memories that her and I will share, and then I always like when they put the bird up over their shoulder and like they're carrying it out of the woods, and the wings are flopping out beyond their bodies, and them are just pictures that you put up and you'll cherish forever. So yeah, you're definitely creating memories. And for me, it's gotten to be that, yeah, I like to get a bird, but if I take somebody with, I would rather have them get to the bird, because that's very rewarding to have the other person get one.
Speaking of which,
yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm not gonna let you go. Your buddy Cal. I realize I'm about 4th down the list on your favorite hunting buddy list. That's fine. I'll earn my way up 3rd spot someday. But But Cal is about your best hunting buddy. And there was this one time you guys were hunting together. Care to pick up the story there?
You got to share it because it's good humor. And so, yeah, well, Cal and I, like you said, it was trial and error. So we started out, we didn't have a mentor, so we're learning it on our own 10 plus years ago. And we finally were getting pretty good at it. We're down by Red Wing, Minnesota, and we're in the ground blind because we're doing archery. And we got our decoy set at, and I just bought one of those nice decoys that you fill with air, and they're really realistic looking. And I was bragging about how nice it was. And I said, you should watch and see this thing work, So anyway, it's setting at about 11 yards. And we call him the Tom, and the Tom's Russian.
Nice and close.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really close. 10 steps, 10, 11 steps. So it's Cal's turn to shoot, and then so I'm doing the calling, and there it is. Well, Cal had what you call a red dot on his bow, archery season, or we're hunting archery, and he couldn't see the dot. Maybe the battery had gone dead or whatever, and there this bird is brushing up against my decoy. He finally figures out, whatever, and gets it turned on. Well, the arrow sits lower than the sight itself. So he's looking through the sight at the bird. He's got his bead on it, and he pulls the trigger, and it doesn't go through the window. It goes through the canvas of the tent. It deflects the arrow, and the bird runs off, and we're thinking, what the heck? So we're running all over looking for the arrow. Well, here what happened is it deflected it, and it shot a hole clean through my brand new decoy. It's all deflated, and we did laugh. I know who does that. That's Cal. So I hope Cal listens to this podcast and he gets a giggle out of it. I just squealed on you, Cal. Sorry.
But those are the sorts of things that happen, right? Especially when you're new to the sport. Well, yeah, the arrow's going to be lower than you're looking, and in a small window of a blind. So be it. Yep. Well, I hope you have good hunts this year. Before we go, this Minnesota Bound podcast, it's important to note this show doesn't just happen by itself. Yes, we're sharing the stories behind the stories, but we've got some great sponsors helping make sure that we are up and running every week. Our good friends at Connecticut, Star Bank, Rapala, Ice Castles, and Hewitt Docks. Thanks so much for supporting the Minnesota Bound podcast. Bill, where are you going to be hunting this year? I know season's getting going here. Where are you going to be down in your regular camp, or are you trying some new spots this year?
Well, as the time has gone on here, and the birds have become, they're moving like more north all the time. There's better population of birds going north, and I have some hunting land up by Malacca. So last year we chased them around our hunting land up there. So I very well might try that. And then, of course, Bill, if you don't want to go out and give her another try, I'm ready.
Wow, I think I just got invited. There's time left in the season. I'm going to go. You talk about the birds expanding north. Of course, they were essentially reintroduced here, and the population continues to grow. There is talk that there will soon be a huntable population of turkeys all the way into the boundary waters. Imagine that if someday you could paddle in to a remote spot in the boundary waters and hunt turkeys. Wouldn't that be an adventure? Wouldn't that be a story for Minnesota Bound? Better work on your J-stroke. You and I are going to go someday when they open that up. Well, Bill Worth, thank you so much for sharing the time. Tell Cal to shoot straight this year, please. And I hope you have a safe spring in the woods. It's good to catch up.
Yeah, great talking. Have a good season.
The Minnesota Bound podcast. These are the stories behind the stories. I'm Bill Shirk, the man about the woods. Thanks for listening, and hope you get a chance to get outdoors. We'll see you back here probably about a week from now. So long. Hank, we'll see you back here probably about a week from now. So long.